of your day. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you know who's coming now? It's Ruan Energy.
Okay.
Ruan.
Our next speaker is Ruan Fourie from Energy Economist, CSIR Energy Center. Welcome, Ruan.
Thanks so much, colleagues. Can everybody hear me? Am I audible enough?
We can hear you and we can see you now. We have visual.
All right. Let me just see if I am host.
We have just claimed back. We'll make you the host. There you go. We are good to go.
Can everybody see the presentation? Hello, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Oh, perfect. All right, thanks so much, colleagues. I think I've enjoyed the sessions that have gone before me. I think it emphasized the importance of growing the African continent's economy as a whole and how we need to do that constructively. My discussion today is going to be a bit more of a deep dive in the energy space specifically. So we'll start by looking at the energy transition that's happening in South Africa right now, the impacts that we are expecting to see associated to that and how we need to prepare for it to ensure it happens in a just manner. What our plan is in the long run is to use the research that we are currently conducting at the CSIR to assist other African nations that are going to go through exactly the same problem. And while there are specific challenges in the energy transition, it provides an excellent opportunity for those involved to do this. So very quickly, my name is Ruan Fourie. I'm an energy economist at the CSIR in Pretoria. I'm also the Secretary of the Council for the South African Association for Energy Economics. And today I'm just going to be quickly talking about the just energy transition, and maybe touch briefly on the energy industry support. So in terms of the agenda, I'll do a quick introduction about what the energy transition is all about. We'll do a bit of a case study of what happens when you do not plan for drastic changes in your economic structure. Then we'll have a look at the Nkangala district municipality in South Africa. We'll have a look at the economic analysis that we've conducted at the CSIR that pertains to the power sector of South Africa. And we'll look at what Europe has done in the similar situation that South Africa is currently finding itself in. So let's do with a bit of an introduction. This is the South African power or energy mix as it is of today. You can see that it is predominantly focused on coal, a little bit of imported oil that we use for some refineries, and then to use that in our transport sector. And then, of course, we have a nuclear station in Cape Town. We have a little bit of renewables and some natural gas. But all of this is currently changing, and there are various reasons why it is changing, but it is changing to this. We see a lot more renewable energy coming into the mix. So this is solar, wind. There's flexibility in terms of your gas facilities, natural gas and biomass. And all of this is going essentially towards the electricity sector in South Africa, which then informs the end use sectors of transport, heat, and synthetic fuel manufacturing. So this is what we expect is happening now already to some extent, and is going to continue to happen in the next 10 to 30 years. This change between the previous slide and this slide is not happening because we're trying to force this in. It's because the technologies here are cheaper, more sustainable, and are going to be used in much larger quantities in the future. Those are some of the reasons. Of course, there's always this reason as well that we can never truly forget about. If it will actually just quickly play. It does not want to. But in any case, in essence, what this specific slide is speaking to is the challenge that we're still facing in terms of climate change. Year on year, we're still seeing these massive amounts of increases in the global temperature in every continent and every nation on Earth. And this is pushing us towards these more sustainable, cleaner technologies to provide us with the energy that we need. So In a nutshell, this is the transition that we're talking about, the change that we're seeing not only happening in South Africa, but globally. Now, when something like this happens, and it's not the first time that a transition has happened in South Africa, we went from landlines and telecoms landlines to cell phones. We went from ADSL to fiber. We went from 3G to LTE to 5G that's coming on the horizon. These changes are consistent, but if you do not necessarily make emphasis or prepare for the change, there might be individuals left behind. And this is where I lead to the case study example that I'll quickly discuss with you now. I don't know if anyone is on the call is perhaps familiar with the Welkom area in the Free State. This was a gold mining region in South Africa, and one of the wealthiest in the South African nation. And you can see on this map specifically, you can see the remaining dumps of earth related to the Welkom area itself. So there was a number of gold mining regions, and I visited this area for about 2 weeks, and the people there said back in the 90s, the saying in Welkom was, the car was old when the ashtray was full. That's how wealthy this nation was and the amount of money that was flowing from this region. But over time, these mines started to close down, whether just reaching their end of life or commodity crises that happened in the late 1990s. And this caused this region to decline quite rapidly. To what extent? To this extent. You see, this is the Machabeng local municipality where Welkom is housed, and amongst all other smaller settlements in close proximity. The green line is the manufacturing industry, and it went from a 30 billion rand industry to less than half of that between 1993 and 2017. All the other small lines at the bottom there, those are just the other economic sectors that just cannot compete with the amount of activity that the mining industry was contributing to this municipality. Of course, this decline also had a detrimental effect on the amount of employment. The mining industry in Machabeng back in 1993 employed about 120,000 people. And in 2017, they were employing 38,000 people. Those are massive job losses in this one local municipality that was not very easily absorbed. And this led us to, as researchers, this led us to some conclusions that the SA economy simply cannot absorb on a national level these massive changes that we can see in these regions. You'll see people leave that local municipality and find work somewhere else, but there will always be individuals left behind in the region due to that sector being in decline. That in turn puts a lot of pressure on the local municipality to provide social grants and services in an ever-changing environment where the income for the municipality to conduct those services is also decreasing rapidly. As such, the Machabeng municipality to date owes about 1.8 billion rand to Eskom, which again, now where it was a regional problem in a local municipality, now has a national implication. The reason why they cannot necessarily pay back that 1.8 billion rand is that 1.8 billion rand is 78% of their annual operating revenue, not profit, revenue. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think. Going on from here specifically, now we need to look to the future, because as I mentioned, the power sector is changing in South Africa. We're going from coal to other technologies, and then we need to look at the regions that house the bulk of our coal fleet today. So this leads us to the Nkangala district municipality in Mpumalanga. This is the outlying area of the district municipality, and you can see there's a lot of brown spots here that are the power stations that are currently powering the country. Kusile is still under construction, has been for about a decade or so. Kendal, Duva, Kriel, Matla, Arnott, Hendrina, Kumati, all of these stations are in one district municipality, and obviously there are associated mining infrastructure that is supporting these power stations. So a lot of jobs in the coal value chain in this region, which I'll showcase to you now. The challenge is captured in this slide. These are the stations that I've now mentioned to you, and you can see that we lose 4 of those stations before 2029. This is not because those stations are being closed early or being decommissioned early. It's because of the age of those stations. If you look at a station like Kumati, it's now 59 years old. Other stations are in close proximity, and this is also contributing to the sustainability and consistency of our electricity sector. Because if we cannot supply, then we get load shed, or Eskom does load reduction, which is also something that is occurring now lately. So these changes are coming, and we need to plan for them, because again, the economic structure of those municipalities just cannot cope with it on a regional level. If you look at this graph, in South Africa, 8% of our economy is mining, which is relatively all right. But if you go into Mpumalanga, it's 23%. In Kangala, it's 35%. In Malahleni, 45%. And then you add the dark blue, which is the power station, and probably the light orange, which is manufacturing, which is in support of the mining and power station activity. And you're looking at, on these regional levels, these local municipalities, those economies are 60 to 65% dependent on the coal value chain, which is going to decline. So we need to plan for it. How are we going to do this? How are we going to overcome this challenge as easily as we would any other? Um, it does sound a bit doom and gloom, and apologies if that is the case, but here comes the positive side of what I'm discussing. Remember earlier I mentioned that the power sector is changing, but we're not going to just hope something comes along. The integrated resource plan, which is released by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, provides us with an overview of what will be added over time. So this is a graph of the generation capacity and the associated energy that it is producing over time. And you can see the brown is the coal generation fleet that is slowly declining. While it is still playing a role in 2030, you can see that its decline creates a gap in what we need as South Africans to adhere to the electricity that we use every day. How it is supplemented by this plan is by the introduction of other technologies, solar PV and wind and hydro and pump storage systems, gas systems to function as power peaking systems to compensate for the flexibility of renewables. There's a lot of other technologies that are coming into the mix, which are cleaner and cheaper, which is why they're chosen by this specific plan, and why we need to focus on investing in those sectors into the future, because they will be the predominant technology that is going to be used. What we then did is we had a look at the generation capacity, and we tried to quantify some job losses and gains. And this is what we found, at least up to 2030. As per the IRP, we see that the coal sector loses about 46,000 direct and indirect jobs, which is substantial. And what we've seen before, most of these job losses will be centralized to the Mpumalanga and Nkangala district municipality. At the same time, we're adding about 35,000 jobs in other technologies that are being deployed in the sector itself. They are more variable because the bulk of those jobs are during construction, but you add those jobs as you're losing others. It just becomes an issue of whether you'll be able to deploy all of those jobs in the region that will be losing the coal sector jobs. In short, the answer is no. If we unconstrain this model by removing certain policy adjustments that had been made, the CSIR found something quite interesting. If we unconstrain the model, you're looking at a 51,000 loss in the amount of coal jobs, but you see almost a 226,000 job gain through other technologies that are being supplied. And that is if you unconstrain the model. So if we do not continue with further development of coal and implementation of earlier decommissioning of stations that are already not viable, you see that more job opportunities can be created in the sectors that we are going to need in the future. Quickly, just as a quick summation, because I think I might be running a little bit short on time, we were invited to the European Union by the European Commission and the GIZ to conduct a study tour to try and understand how they have gone about this exact same issue, right? We needed to understand, as we are transitioning away from older technologies that are no longer viable, how do we keep those regional economies alive? And we found some interesting things. This is just the overview of the study tour in essence, but we traveled throughout Europe to try and see how they addressed it. I'm going to highlight only one that is going to be that I want to share with you guys today. It's in the Lausitz coal fields. It's a F60 conveyor bridge. Now, the F60 conveyor bridge is this massive structure that is used in open cast coal mining. And this mine specifically was constructed in 1991. And that was about a year before the Berlin Wall came down. And as soon as the Berlin Wall came down, this mine, which was located in Eastern Germany, it just immediately overnight shut down. And the German government, which was reunited after 1992, took quite a bit of time to realize the damage because of those splits in lines. By the time they did, they decided to invest quite rapidly. They invested in different sectors, not just in one. So it's not just a one-for-one change between coal and renewables. They invested in renewable energy deployment, tourism, and conservation, all in an attempt to uplift the area and keep it sustainable for those individuals that still stay in the region. This is a quick image of how it looks. So you can see quite nicely, the massive lake that you see here is actually the open cast mining area where they excavated some of the coal. They filled that in to create a lake. They created some beaches on the left and right hand side where people can come and visit. There's a solar PV facility right here and some wind facilities on the horizon. And I'm standing on the conveyor bridge itself, which is being used as a tourist attraction, celebrating the coal heritage of the region. I think it was a very innovative solution to ease that challenge. But I want to get a little bit further. Just in terms of the research that we are still conducting at the CSIR, obviously, we're trying to identify with this energy transition, environmental effects, social effects, technical and cost effects, economic effects. We've worked in all of these spaces to some extent, but still a lot of work needs to be done. Just as a quick overview, in terms of our discussion today, why I wanted to talk about this specifically, and it speaks to what has been discussed by the other speakers before me, is there's a great opportunity that's being provided to the African continent as this energy transition is unfolding, and not just in South Africa, but in Africa as a whole. Because as South Africa changes over time, due to the fact that these technologies are cheaper, this will also filter into the rest of Africa. That is not something that we can easily ignore. But at the same time, and this speaks to what was mentioned by the proudly South African colleague, we need to understand to some extent, sorry, I just want to admit this individual, we need to understand that we need to localize the technologies as best we can. That still makes financial sense into the future so that we can create the jobs needed in South Africa. This requires us to secure the demand. And that's why I made the comment when Eustace was talking about it specifically. South Africa alone does not have the demand for South Africa alone does not have the demand for sorry, I'm just gonna here. Yeah. Apologies, I see Molabatsi, could you please mute? All right. Apologies, colleagues. All right. So we need to localize those value chains as best we can. We need to ensure that when we're working, when we're creating renewable energy technologies in South Africa, that we're building the manufacturing facilities and the capabilities and skills that we need to sustain those jobs for years to come. To do that, we need to ensure that on the African continent, we localize that to African individuals. We need to ensure that if there is a renewable energy manufacturing facility, it is located on the African continent, supplying those modules or wind turbines or structures to African demand for those structures, because South Africa just cannot compete with the demand that we see in China and India. There's just so much more demand for that technology in their region. Even if we replace South Africa's entire electricity mix with renewables, we will still not be able to compete. And this is why this collaboration within the African continent to create these competitive advantage in different African nations is so critically important. If we can understand this localization is going to create future jobs and get on the bus early, instead of having other nations continuously develop in large scales and we just importing that technology in South Africa. If we can localize demand and localize the technologies to our nations, we will be able to sustain those jobs for many years to come. So colleagues, this is what I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm more than willing to take any questions that you guys